welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. You are the co-founder, vice president, and general manager of Gap Wireless Incorporated, a leading product and service distributor for the mobile, broadband, and wireless markets. You have well over 3 decades of experience in sales. You've spent thousands of hours both in the field or on the phone with customers, working with salespeople to create some very successful companies. In fact, after entering the sales field in 1985 as a technical sales rep, you founded your first company, Wave Technologies, in 1991, served as president of Enritsu Products about 9 years, and now use your experiences and insights to provide lectures on the sales strategy, consumers, and what motivates people at a raw emotional level. Glenn, I'm curious, given the fact that sales has obviously become something of a strength for you, why go into writing a book? And just for people's information, the book is called Never Sit in the Lobby, 57 Winning Sales Factors to Grow a Business and Build a Career Selling, and engage in some coaching as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. It's great to be here and happy to be on the podcast and all that, share some of the stuff. And one interesting thing as well is that the Gap Wireless was sold.
Yeah.
I sold that business in 2022, February, and I had a kind of a 3-year deal with the private equity. And I left after the 3-year window, I left them in December 2024. And I bought a new business in I moved to change countries. I changed technologies. I changed customers, but I running the same kind of business. So that may come up during our talk today as well. So I'm on my third iteration.
Right.
And happy to share any part along the way. Now, I think you might have had an original
Sure.
question. I'm not sure.
I was just curious, given that there is an entrepreneurial streak, you're exceptional at sales, why branch out into coaching and writing the book?
So the book was a culmination of all the years of me coming up with rules that I had to learn from mentors and coworkers along the way, and started in 85. And I was learning these great lessons from people. And after a while, I started writing them down and naming them after people and trying to write funny stories around. And then I would share the stories with salespeople. And then after telling them for a while, they would laugh and they say, "Oh my God, this is really funny," or "This is awesome. You should do some of this. You should come into my company and train my salespeople on some of these rules," right? And so I was doing that early on, and people are like, "Oh, you should write a book." And of course, I actually never did write the book until the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, I had this giant book after 30 years of experience of all my little tips and tricks. And I thought, we're locked up. I'm in Canada at the time and nowhere to go, nothing to do. And I had some time on my hands, and I decided I was going to buckle down and write the book. So it was just a fun thing to do and see if I could do while I had nothing else to do during the pandemic. And the coaching, I don't really coach. I don't charge people to coach. That's not really what I do. I work more with entrepreneurs and I exchange ideas, and I work more on a quid pro quo basis where I work with other entrepreneurs that are running businesses, and we share and exchange ideas, and I learn from them. And then I often help them with the things that I'm good at, which is like building a sales team, structuring compensation, setting up leadership teams and businesses and things like that. But the coaching is really on a basis of paying it forward and receiving sort of similar things in kind back.
Very interesting. So you mentioned a few strengths that you've identified in your journey to date, but looking back, what would you say is your key area of personal strength?
I guess probably the biggest strength that everything else builds upon is my ability to take risk and jump into the chasm of fear that comes with starting entrepreneurial ventures. Whereas I've found a lot of people that I talk to, that's their biggest challenge, is getting over those hurdles. And throughout the years, I've been able to take chances, and I would think something up and I think, okay, let's do this. And then the next day I'd pull the trigger and we'd be off to the races and working on it. Now, of course, not everything works, right? Just because one thing works doesn't give you the right that the next thing will be successful. I've learned that the hard way many times, but my ability to launch quickly and without fear, I do have fear, but in spite of the fear, I'm still able to push forward. That's probably my biggest strength. And then the rest of it, the next thing would be my focus on customer focused, building businesses around a customer centric focus, a truly customer-centered business. When I went from Wave in the 90s to the Gap Wireless in the 2000s, I'd noticed some areas of customer service and the way we handle customers and issues that me and the partners I had at that firm, I wasn't 100% kosher with. And so I decided when I started Gap Wireless that I wanted to really build something where we were a pleasure to do business with as the genesis of the business. And of course, we'd be competitive and have a good pricing and a value product line and all that jazz. But we would do it from a focus of always answering the phone, always being a pleasure. And when we lost the business, we would still be a pleasure to work with our customers because they were in our space in the telecom. We often dealt with the same customers over and over again for years and years.
And in that area of strength of taking risks, what would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
About the
Yep.
taking of the risks, or the one thing, it's a story around that I always tell is the fact that when it comes to taking risks, most people are scared, right? Like it's fear, right? And some of the biggest motivators for people can be fear and greed, right? And in order to take action and what have you, and oftentimes they find themselves bumping up against a wall because of this fear. What if I'm not successful? What if I run out of money? And what I often coach people is that the fear will exist no matter what, right? Because later you're gonna have the fear of what if and what if I had of, and all the fear of loss of all those things, right? And that really all they need to do is have the courage to take that one final step, because the fear is not going to go away, right? What's going to happen is at first the fear keeps them from taking that last step over the wall to entrepreneurship. And once you've taken that step, the wall's now behind you. And now you're moving forward. And again, fear is propelling you. You don't want to fail. You don't want to starve. You don't want to be a failure, etc. But every day that you move forward from that point, the wall's another day behind you. And after 6 months, it's in the distance. You can't even see it anymore. But on the other side, before you take the step, you just hit it every day. You don't go any further, right? So you got to take that step. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, there's a few things you need. You need a minimum viable product. You need something you're going to be selling, right? A product of some sort. 2, you need a customer that you probably didn't earn, meaning the first one you usually get by luck. You have to earn all the rest of them, right? Because you're a brand new business. You sure didn't build it on your experience, because you don't have any. It's a brand new company. Even if you had 40 years of experience at a different business, you're now in a new business that has no track record. So the first one is usually one that you don't deserve. Someone takes a chance on you, etc. But I wouldn't start the business until I had a customer identified that I know that would give me a piece of business if I took the step. And the third thing is you need 18 to 24 months of food and shelter and clothing and in the bank, ready to go. You either need a spouse that can support you, or you need a runway of 18 to 24 months where you're not going to burden your company having to take out grocery money, gas money, rent money, etc. You need to have that. Those are the 3 things you need: minimum viable product, a customer, and 18 months of financial runway, so that you're not burdening your company personally to live.
Great points there. Thank you for that. So your latest venture, what exactly is it?
Sorry, the latest one? Yeah. So the businesses that I've been in all my life have been distributors, right? So essentially, we approach companies from around the world, and in our local market, we sell their products locally, and we become their outsourced sales force. We buy and stock and sell products to customers for them. They're not big enough to have a direct sales force. And it's a very common business model, and it's a simple import-export kind of business. Not export, but just import business. And I've always been in telecom, selling, and primarily in the wireless telecom space, primarily in the cellular side, delivering the infrastructure products to carriers and contractors and stakeholders that are building and operating wireless networks. Now, when I sold the business, I also had a very strong no compete, which said I wouldn't compete with them in my market and in my technology area and whatever. So I bought a business in Florida. I was in Toronto in Canada, a different country, and I was able to get my E2 visa. My wife and I, we bought a distributor in Florida that does the same kind of business, selling these high-tech products. but to a completely different industry and nothing to do with
Mm.
telecom or wireless. So the new business is involved in the testing and certification of power generation and distribution, substation utility networks and the like. And so basically calling on all the utilities, the investor-owned utilities, the government-owned utilities, and the co-ops in the United States, and helping sell them equipment to test the grid, test the transformers, test the breakers, test the battery banks, etc. And so a completely different industry. I know nothing about it. All the buzzwords are different. There's still ohms and current involved and everything like that. There isn't anything that's electrical, but completely different end of the spectrum. I was dealing with millimeter wave frequencies at microvolts, and now I'm dealing with 400,000 volts at
Certainly.
60 hertz. And yeah, but the business is the same. A much smaller company, but it was buying products from around the world, importing them to the US, and selling them
Yeah.
in the domestic market. And so I understand the business just like the back of my hand. And I was just able to say, okay, what do we do in the wireless space that worked? And our website, our accounting systems, our
Mm.
marketing, our lead generation, our sales force, and how do we build the team and the customer service side of things. And I'm just bringing all those things from my old experience to bear on this new company. It's not a new company. The company's 20 years old. The owner was retiring. And now, but what I'm trying to do is to modernize it, upgrade
Mm.
everything, the website, all the marketing, all the digital marketing, and see if I can grow one more business one more time and maybe sell it in a few years and then fully retire as I get a little bit older. Because I'm in my early 60s now. I could retire, but I'm just a little bit, I'm not looking to retire. I love going to work every day, and that's what I do.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Just perhaps focusing in on your sales experience. How would you break down perhaps your framework for properly defining sales roles, including things like metrics, compensation structures, etc.?
Just so I answer the question, because I
Mhm.
could ramble on in 9 different directions. So when you say break down the roles, do you mean like the departments or the people, or what do you want me to touch on? Just so I really hone in about.
Perhaps both, because setting up the right structures and the frameworks within the company, especially in sales, often tends to be a bit of a struggle.
Okay, fine. I believe in the old school model where when you're selling something that's expensive, like I am, like a $50,000 instrument, those are sold by people to people, and often they're sold face to face. Some of the sales cycle can be done remotely, but ultimately, typically, the equipment that they're buying are typically delivered to the site, tested and shown that they do the job, and they're done. That's done by people. And so really it becomes a face-to-face thing. I break it down. The very first step for me is the
Mm.
business development representative lead generation step. And I've outsourced that to the Philippines in my latest company. It's the most cost effective. They're very diligent, very qualified, university educated. They learn your business. You work with the same people every day, and you can develop a really good system. They make a lot of phone calls, and they have scripts that we've helped them to develop. And they're looking for the real front end leads for our sales guys that are a bit more expensive. And then we have an inside sales team that can handle inbound, anything coming in off the web, or maybe it doesn't warrant passing to the outside team. Maybe it's a very small parts or something like that. So we have the inside, we call sales development, ISR, inside sales rep, and then and then we have the outside, the OSR, the account executive. They're managing a geographical territory and a specific group of accounts. And so, as the owner of the company, I lease the accounts in that particular area to a particular salesperson. And you're responsible for Southern California, you're responsible for the Northeast US, you're responsible for the Midwest, etc. And so when it comes to the BDR and if you will, and the person in the Philippines that we're using, how do I measure them? I measure them on number of leads they've contacted, how many meetings or leads they've passed off to us, how many of those convert into a real opportunity. And I don't really measure them on did it close, because if they've developed something that becomes a real opportunity, we
Mhm.
lose it, it's on us, right? And then any kind of response rate that I can measure is something I would track with the BDRs, right? The inside people, it's how many deals did they close on their own kind of inside accounts? How long does it take to close deals from the beginning to the end? What's the revenue quota, right? For a sales company, it's all about the quota and the margin, right? And what's their average deal size? And then the outside guys, obviously, it's quota, right? How many deals did they close? What's the revenue? What was the margin? And what's the size of their funnel relative to their quota? Are they keeping it at a like 5-to-1 ratio where they have enough in their funnel? Are they adding every week? Are they moving things along every week in their funnel? And then are they closing? And are the ratios healthy and acceptable that they have enough new stuff going in that there'll be a deal every X amount of days, hours, weeks, or whatever for them to hit their numbers. And then the final one would be the global account manager or the national account manager, where certain accounts are national in scope. In the telecom world, we handle like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile as a national account, right? Where there was a national account manager. He had some local support and things like that. Same in the utility space with certain utilities are quite broad in their geographical. They're not fully national because of the way electricity is handled, but they are semi-national, right? And then, of course, the sales manager, sales director to manage the whole thing.
Forms more of a traditional sales type operation from the sounds of it. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And for my opinion, it's structure first, people second. So what do I need? I need someone generating leads. I need someone handling inbound and day-to-day stuff. I need someone outside. And then I set up that structure, who they're report to, what the measurements are. Then I've staffed to the positions. And rather than say, Bob lives in Seattle, so you're now our Seattle salesperson. He might not be the right person for that. If I decide I need a guy in Seattle, then I'm going to recruit someone in Seattle for that, the right person for the right seat.
Now, when it comes to salespeople in particular, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you classify them into 4 groups: enemies, rats, stars, and puppies. Will that be correct?
Yeah, so that's the EOS model for salespeople, right? Or even staff members, right? And there's a slight, and they've updated the way. What were the 4? How you named them again? Can you say that again? It was rats, stars, puppies, yeah, and enemies, right? Yeah, and this is all related to how they merge with the core values of the business, right? And stars are the ones you're looking for, right? And they're good on core values and they're good, right? The puppies are good on core values, but they're bad performers, right? Enemies are, how's it work? I think they're bad on they're bad on performance, but they're okay on core values. And then rats are bad at both. And they scare away, rats and enemies scare away your stars, right? And rat spelled backwards is star, right? And it's a firm believer in setting core values and hiring and firing, motivating, bonusing, and people based on the core values.
So how would you actually go about identifying these salespeople as you seek new employees? Is there a particular methodology that you follow?
So when you're hiring salespeople, a lot of times it's dumb luck if you get it right. You try to do your best. You think you've done it. You put them through the ringer. This time we're going to do 4 interviews. They're going to talk to everyone. We're going to do this. We're going to screen them or test them or whatever. But oftentimes you don't get it right. But you need to hire slowly and fire quickly. And so the one thing is you have to try your best to measure how they react to whatever core values you've set for your company. And make sure that they're going to fit in along those lines, right? Because they may be good in some ways, but like, for instance, if customer service is important to them, but these guys are like, no, I'll get the deal at any cost. And they're high producers. The customers, it's not first, right? And so like I said, it's really a process of hiring slowly, firing quickly. If they're not the right people, you got to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Admit your mistakes and move on. But there's no magic. Even if you're hiring a top producer from your number one competitor, doesn't mean they'll thrive in your organization because you guys do it differently, right? And it's hard. It takes time. And then when you get good salespeople, I believe in treating them well. I don't mean spoiling them or prima donna or anything like that. I just mean treat them really well and try to make it an environment they never want to leave, because replacing them can be.
You've mentioned customer service at least a couple of times, so I'm curious, what would be the story behind your mantra, get, act, and stay in front of clients?
So that's a tenet behind the book, where it's how do you get in front of the customer, stay in front of the customer, and so that you will always be a pleasure to do business with, and you can do those things, get, act, and stay in front of them, right? And really the thesis behind that is don't be a pain in the ass, right? don't be not a pleasure to do business. It's really that simple. And so scattered throughout the book are numerous rules that show you mistakes that were made or rules to follow in order to be more of a pleasure to do business with, and how to conduct yourself in a manner that isn't counter to those sort of things, right? But as a business, it's about responding fast, being easy to reach, using 2 ears and one mouth, right? Listening twice as much as you're talking, listening first, right? Owning the problem, solving the problem at the lowest possible level in the organization. The way we did that at Gap Wireless was we gave everyone, no matter, even right down to the warehouse worker, if a customer was upset, the lowest level of authority was $100. If they could solve a customer problem instantly for $100 or less, they had the authority to do it. They just said, hey, I gave away free shipping. I did this. The guy said there was an item missing from a box, gave him a new one, whatever, right? And right up to the owner, the president, the vice presidents, they all had authority to solve customer problems. And that was the whole idea, was to make everyone accountable that, hey, that problem couldn't be solved for $100. You have $100 authority. You need to solve it, and give them that authority and freedom to do that, and then reward them for having done it. And so that's what I mean about owning the problem, following up, being honest, building true rapport with the customer, which again involves showing appropriate amounts of sympathy, empathy, and compassion in the right doses at the right times, understanding the difference between those, what they mean and how they should be applied, and then looking for feedback and apply a feedback loop to your organization to make sure that you're adopting new methodologies to keep up with the time. And so I just find that if you're always focusing on trying to give the customer the best possible experience, now that doesn't mean being fast and unfair to yourself. It's fast and fair, right? Like the old saying, you can have it good, fast, and cheap. You can have two of them, but not three. You can have it good and fast. You can have it fast and cheap, but not good. But you can't have all three, right? So there's trade-offs.
So that would explain the core elements that you described in your book. But your book outlines, I believe, something like 57 sales factors. Is there anything else that you've discovered as you've helped transform companies as well as grow your own companies that tend to be common pitfalls in especially in sales organizations? If so, what would they be?
Yeah. Okay. The one thing is the trying to reduce your business down to its core process of what it is you do, and understanding that at its base level, and then explaining that to everybody that works there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for instance, let's say you sold laundry detergent or whatever, right? Some people think you sell soap, right? But really what you do is help people have clean clothes, right? That kind of thought process is what I'm driving at. But you want to, and you do that by attending to the customer, determining what type of fabrics they use or what the environment is, and then recommending the appropriate soap and delivering that soap on time, checking inventory levels and keeping things. That might be your process. I'm just making that up off the top of my head. But so you want to define the sales process and make sure everyone understands it, and reduce it to one page if you can. Make it repeatable and simple, and always try to reduce it to the lowest common denominator. First, we meet with the customer, we determine their needs, we determine how we could service those needs. Then we make a proposal, we close the business, and we run them through our customer service satisfaction algorithm or what have you, right? You want to be setting clear goals, right? So that are clear and reasonable, attainable, SMART goals, obviously, specific, measurable, achievable, realistically, and timely, right? And you can't be doubling your business in 1 year. That's been normally, unless there's an anomaly. So you want them to be realistic. So some of the other things are installing and using the proper set of tools, right? Like a CRM. And a lot of times people, like the owner says, oh, we're putting in a CRM, right? And then like, everyone in the sales force got to use it. It's mandatory or you're fired, right? Every conversation has to be in the CRM or whatever, right? And then the owner comes walking in one day, sees his top sales guy that covers whatever, Ford or GM or something, they're calling on automotive. And so he pulls the Ford sales guy aside. He said, hey, what's going on with that big deal for exasperators over at Ford? And he goes, sales guy says, it's in the CRM. I've been there for the last 2 weeks straight with the whole team. Everything's in the CRM. Didn't you read the CRM? And the owner's like, no, tell me. He said, why? Like, you can either have it in the CRM or I'm going to tell you now, but I'm not doing both, right? And so if you're going to put in a CRM, you got to revolve your culture around the CRM, which revolves everyone changing their, right? And so you can't just say the sales has to type it in, no one reads it. What's the point of that? You want to be using it, right? You want to be training people. You want to be hiring the right people. You want to be measuring data on a consistent basis, forward-looking indicators, reverse-looking indicators. How do we do? How are we doing? How will we do? Right? And I follow the EOS process, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, where each department meets every week for either 60 or 90 minutes. And there's a series of topics and systems that go through. The scorecard is a big part of it. Coming out of the scorecard become issues, and issues get solved and actions get determined, right? And so I'm a big proponent of leading with the data. And also, in a sales company, you want to be aligning your sales and your marketing teams, right? So sales is the guy that's in front of the customer, closing the deal, doing the demo, booking the business, etc. Marketing is generating everything that leads up to that point. Lead generation, websites, trade shows, all that stuff, social media, digital marketing, and you want to make sure that the teams are in sync with what each other's doing and you're not at odds, right? You don't want a marketing team that's building an e-commerce platform to service the world. And the other guys are all about face-to-face selling, and it's face-to-face or die, right? So you want to be aligned on your sales and marketing. And again, of course, in my company, it's a focus on the customer first, right?
Which kind of brings me back to this thought that you mentioned earlier of core values. Now, I know a lot of companies struggle with the process of establishing core values and ensuring that teams actually live by them. What would be your take on that?
Yeah. So what I recommend is that you pick a group of not too many, but not too little, a group of people from across the business and across the cross section of hierarchy and role, right? So try to pick someone that's lowly, a mid guy, some senior guys, and then leadership, and get them off site and on task, and have it be a 1 or a 2 day affair to come up with the core values, and hire a core value coach to help you to develop the core values. It's not my specialty, developing core values. There's a whole series of these questions they make you answer. I can't remember what they all are, but investing in that was the best thing I ever did. And it showed me the difference between when I just made them up. And once I had joined this company, and like I was involved with this company, and the guy came with the core values, and jokingly I said to him, he said, okay, we're here for the core values. These are the core values. And I'm like, what? Like, why am I here? And I said, what, did you Google these on the weekend? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, that's not how core values are set. And really, the core values never changed from what he Googled on the weekend. And it was customer first, people first, these kind of silly things that Google comes up with, right? And now you might get a little better with results from ChatGPT, but still, they may not be your core values. You might be running like a discount thing where certain things have to be cut, corners have to be cut in order to give the price that's required. And it's value first, right? Something like that might be a core value, but that doesn't mean, so customer service might be second. It might be an automated attendant. You might never get any on the phone. Not the core value, right? You're going to get the best price when you do it.
Is there a particular company that you prefer to work with, and would you mind giving them a shout out?
So the way I have set the last set of core values in the last couple times I've been through it is because I was working with the EOS system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And when you hire, that's the first part of the business is setting the core values. They come in, and the facilitator, the person that meets with you quarterly and annually, they will help you to set the core values, and it's done for a 2-day vision building session. So that would be my only real world example that I could speak to directly. But you don't have to go with EOS directly. There are people that will help you. That one you would need Google for, but you'll find lots of people that could come in and facilitate setting up values and some other metrics. And
you talked about trying to make sure that your teams are a pleasure to do business with always. And in thinking through that, are there specifics? I know you've alluded to some already, but are there specifics that you feel that people must possess in the way they conduct themselves? And if so, what would be your process or methodology for training them to achieve that?
So one of the ways is the way I have them look at winning and losing deals, right? So one of my tenets is always, I'd rather be last than second, right? Because second is just the number one loser, right? And it takes just as long to come in second as it does to come in first, and you're still a loser, right? So what I mean by that is, so how do I be a pleasure to do business with? Is by not investing things to the point where I'm ready to blow my brains out because of how much I've invested in a deal and then lost. So what I will do is I will figure out every step of the way. I'm measuring and asking myself the following question. At this point in time, is it unequivocal that I'm going to lose the business because of X, Y, or Z? Price, delivery, contracts, legalities, installed base, whatever it is. It could be anything, right? Because I never know what deal I'm going to get called in on. And that's why I'm also big about face-to-face. The guy wants to buy a new Acme accelerator for his business. I sell Acme accelerators. IBM sells Acme accelerators. Dell sells Acme accelerators. And I show up and I ask the guy, one of my rules is always ask for a mini tour. I go on a mini tour with the guy to look at where the accelerators are going to be installed. And I realize everyone in there is wearing Dell shirts and they have Dell coffee mugs and there's 9 Dell accelerators installed. Now, am I there to keep Dell honest and scare them that they might lose a deal and give a better price? Or are they really going to switch out 9 systems and buy a 10th orphan, right? Very unlikely. Still, I will then question that. When I realize unequivocally that I'm going to lose the deal, then I quietly and gently cease all efforts of helping that customer. And so in other words, if they say, hey, now I need you to fly in a demo from Atlanta and leave it here for a month. I'm like, okay, we could do that in 3 months from now. Like, no, we need this next week and we need it for a month or whatever. I'm saying, oh, I can't meet. And you won't be able to compete. And then I'll be, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able, because I'm not going to tie up my equipment for a month. And I'll get out of the deal. And what I'll do is I'll race to my next deal, because that sales guy, he's tied up fighting off IBM and HP and all the other brands that are selling accelerators and are willing to fly in the demo stupidly and waste their time. I'm already moving on to my next deal. I'm a pleasure. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't deliver next week. How about a month from now? How about 2 months from now? And he goes, I need it for a month. I go, I can give it to you for a week. And I just make everything, and I'm all doing everything with a smile on my face and being very polite about it. But I'm just not going to hyper cooperate. I'm not going to fly them out to the factory and give them a tour of our engineering departments and wine and dine them and take them golfing. And those are for customers that have been buying from me for years and what have you. And so I'm always applying the right amount of emphasis on the right syllable. You know what I'm saying? So that I'm never mad about the way things are going, so that I can always act in a manner that I find to be agreeable and presentable. And so it's all about how I behave. And so that's what I mean, right? Because you're never going to win them all. And again, if they come in and they say, oh, we can't give you that deal for the exasperator because we have a contract with Dell and my boss just made me look at three scenarios just to be thorough. I already knew that a month ago. I already didn't give you the demo, and I already went to your competitor and I sold them an exasperator.
Brilliant points. Again, thank you for sharing that. It certainly clarifies that perspective. I believe you also teach your sales teams to always have something in their hand and something in their mind. Could you elaborate on that and explain how that works?
Yeah. So essentially, that's part of the little litany of rules that come right up when you're visiting customers, not for the first time, but when you're visiting customers, right? One of them is never sit in the lobby, right? So that's the title of the book, Never Sit in the Lobby. And what it means is when you show up at the customer, show up on time and pronounce yourself to the receptionist or on the phone, whatever it is, to the person that's expecting you, and say, hey, Jack, it's Glenn. I'm in the lobby for my 3 o'clock meeting and it's 2:58, right? And he's, oh, yeah, I forgot you were coming. Okay, I'll be right down. And so what I do is I do not sit down. I do not pick up a magazine. I do not pull out my phone. I do not go look at plaques on the wall. I stand, I stare at the door I know he's going to come out of, and I'm waiting, right? Because I don't want to be sitting down, crouched, talking about the grocery list to my wife, and she starts a litany about blah, blah, blah. Sally got in trouble at school today, and you got to come home early, and now I'm all frazzled, and the guy comes in, he goes, are you Glenn? And I'm like, oh my God. And then I have to rise up out of my chair, center myself, right? So that's why I'm at attention, never sitting in the lobby. That's rule number 1, right? Rule number 2 is always have something in your hand and something in your mind. The moment I say hello to him or her, I give them what it was. It might be swag. It might be a Yeti water bottle. It might be a mouse pad or pens and pencils or golf balls or mouse pads or t-shirts or whatever. Or it might be a quotation or literature or a report or something that they ask. And often those reasons are how I got into the lobby to see them in the first place. Because before those rules kick in, a week before, the guy said to me, hey, we're interested in me accelerators, right? Can you send me a quote? And I'm like, oh, you're at Honeywell or whatever, right? In Toronto or something like that. I'm like, I'm going to be there next week, Thursday. Why don't I drop off the quote to you? Oh, I'm really busy. I'm like, that's no problem. I'll just drop it off in the lobby. How's that? He goes, okay, no problem. Remember, I'm really busy. So a week from now, I know I have a meeting at Honeywell. So I do two things. One, I prepare the quote and everything. And that's what's going to be in my hand, right? And then I call everyone I know at Honeywell and I make secondary appointments. And I say, hey, Sally, Jack's looking to us for new accelerators, ask for some quotes and pricing. And I know you might even be involved in that evaluation. Can I get a couple of minutes with you? Oh, I'm really busy. Maybe could you pop down to the lobby while I'm there visiting Jack? Okay, sure, no problem. Give me a call when you're in the lobby. Then I call Bill, Bob, Sam, George, etc., right? And now I may have 3 or 4 meetings scheduled. And now I got a real good reason to be at Honeywell for a couple hours, right? And again, for each one, might only have a mouse pad or a water bottle to give the one guy. I don't have a lot to talk to him, but I have something I want to talk to each one of them about. That's what I have in my mind. The first one is, here's my quote. Have a look at it in the lobby, standing right there. What do you think of the price? How does that strike you? Am I in the ballpark? Are you scared? Whatever, right? Whatever's appropriate. And then the next rule, after something in your hand, something in your mind, is always ask them for a mini tour. Show me where you're going to set it up. Where's it going to be evolved? Because I want to see what t-shirts your people are wearing. I want to see what mouse pads are on their desk. I want to see what equipment's installed. And I want to walk by all the other facilities on the way to your section and see what equipment they use. Because I represent 12 vendors from around the world, and your company buys 6 of those products. And so I want to see, as I'm walking by engineering, I want to see if their engineering guys are looking, if there's stuff there that, oh, I didn't know they did. You know what I mean? And walking by production, oh my God, they have a high-speed such and such. I didn't know that. And then I walk by the warehousing and I see them using high-speed packaging or special kinds of systems for handling the kind of stuff I sell or whatever, right? Oh my God, there's a ton of things here I'm missing. And so later I'm going to say to them, I noticed in your production area that you're packaging, you're doing high-speed packaging of integrated circuits or whatever. Who's responsible, right? Oh, that's Bob. Oh, when we're done, could you just drop me by so I could drop off my business card, say hello, and meet him face to face? And when I get there, I'm going to see if Jack will leave me with Bob, and Bob will walk. And I'll say, hey, Bob, can I get 2 minutes of your time? Thanks, Jack. Jack says, yeah, whatever. He's done. He wants to leave, right? So he leaves, and Bob agrees to walk you out. And now he's walking you around, giving you mini tours, right? And then, of course, the final rule in the exodus of rules there is that before any of that starts, you have to pull up to Honeywell, right? You're in the parking lot. You're 10 minutes early. You don't want to be standing in the lobby because you never sit in the lobby. So where do you sit? You sit in your car. And what do you do? Is the golden rule, the never forget a face rule. So what do? You pull out your phone and you go through all the people that you've met at Honeywell. It might be 20 people, every one of them. And you remember their face. And if you can't remember their face like that in the car, like you can look at them and go, that's Sally. Then you go to their LinkedIn and you start associating with them and then move on. Now there's Jack. Oh, Jack's the bald, right? Yeah, Bob's the short guy, whatever. And move all of that information to the front of your mind, because guess what? You're in the lobby, you had something in your hand, something in your mind. You ask for the mini tour. You're walking down the hall. Guess who you're going to walk by? Bob and Sally, George, Paul, etc. And you, hey, how's it going, Paul? How's it going, George? How's it going, Sam, etc. Right? And the guy's, he's never met you before. He's, oh my God, Glenn knows everybody. And then he talks to those people later and they'll go, oh yeah, that Glenn, he's a pleasure to do business. He's always a pleasure to do business with. And at some points, I even bump into my competitors and even they're happy to see me because I'm just not an a-hole.
Fundamentally, if I'm hearing you correctly, it boils down to relationships. And the key part of relationships is communication. Yeah.
True rapport.
From a communication point of view, what are the aspects that you have consciously invested in to lift your game since you joined sales back in 85?
Yeah. So the number one thing that I've realized about that. Sorry, did you say report?
No,
Sure, I heard you correct.
I said,
Or
if I
no.
understand this correctly, it boils down to relationships, but a key part of relationships is
Relationships. Yes, right.
communication. And
Oh,
I'm curious as
communication.
to what
Right.
you
Yeah.
invested
So
in to leverage or build that up.
yeah. So with communication, to me, that's why I was thinking. I got a little sidetracked. I was thinking ahead, and it's all about rapport. Rapport is all about listening. God gave you 2 ears, 1 mouth. You do the math, right? The whole thing. That's golden rule. And so I'm a big proponent of active listening and not suggesting anything to a client until you fully understand what they do, how they do it, why they need your equipment, how your equipment would be used, or whatever it is you sell, software, hardware, it doesn't matter, right? But not just jumping in and saying, hey, we're the number one software, HR software on the planet. We got 12,000 installed bases and our head office is in Sweden, and nobody cares about any of that, right? It's like they may be upgrading their HRIS system because they want to integrate payroll with benefits. That's all they care about. And they only need your first 2 modules. The rest of it's just superfluous. And you're wasting. And so what I do is I try to adapt and adopt active listening, right? So where 1, stop talking, 2, look at them when you're communicating, show you're listening, don't reply right away. Always be looking for a comeback where the guy says, we're looking for a high speed. Oh, our system's really high speed. And they can handle a very large user. Oh, our user base is incredible. Number one user base in the world. Because he might even not finish the sentence, and he might say, you know what, we need a number one user base, but we need to have it in 9 different languages. And he didn't get that out. And he never gets it out because you interrupt him, right? And eventually what you do is you de-build rapport. You don't build rapport. There's other salesmen that are visiting that are finding out, like, what's your number one problem? We deal in 9 countries, 9 languages. We want an integrated system. We want all of our staff. We have an HR person in every country. We want them all to use the same system. That's a sine qua non. That's got to happen. That's our go-to, right? And you got to get that stuff out, right? And young salespeople, excited salespeople, they're not communicating properly. They're not listening properly, right? And I challenge people to learn how to do active listening and how to build rapport, right? And don't make assumptions. And there's stories in the book about how not to make assumptions, have you, and how to learn. And the number one way to sell to a customer is to learn what they do as well as they know what they do, right? Don't just assume that you know what they do because you've seen a brochure or looked at the first page of their website. You have to really understand, what are they shipping out the back door? How do they make money, right? There's companies that they might sell security cameras and garage door openers and arms that open up parking lots and things like that. And you're like, oh yeah, it's access control, right? But really what they do, they make all their money from the software that controls. And so you got to figure that out, because they buy all that hardware from someone else. They don't make arms that go up and down. They don't buy cameras. They buy them from or Japan or Korea. And those are just like a sunk cost. They have a little bit of margin on it. They make all their money off the software. The proper salesman will figure that out when they're looking at that business. And what they do, they sell software.
Yeah.
Right? What do software companies care about?
Brilliant.
Sure.
With this idea of building out systematic sales teams and organizations that are very much process driven by core values, would you say that there are perhaps a couple of areas that more often than not tend to get glossed over? If so, what would they be?
Okay. Some of the areas where things go wrong is probably the best way I can answer it, maybe. So one is you screw up the onboarding, right? Where everyone that's there knows what's going on. God help you when you have to hire somebody new, right? Because passing it on to the next guy, it's basically fire hose, throw them into the fire, sink or swim. Those are all their street training strategies, right? So onboarding is so important to getting it right. And it's expensive, it's time consuming, but that's when you're going to find out if you hired the right person. And if not, you can let them go without any cause or reason, because it's early in the probation period and you're saying, look, it's not working out. We're going to move on and go a different. You want to have very good clarity on the role of each person. like for instance, in the sales side of things, what does the BDR do? What does the ISR do? What does the OSR do? What does the sales manager do? Director of sales, VP of sales, CRO. Each one of them, they need to be responsible for a certain piece in the stack. It needs to be well defined and published and available for everyone to read, and just second nature to what the business is, right? You want to have regular one-on-one coaching sessions with your team. Stay engaged with them, measure their performance to their forward and backward leading indicators, and what have you. Coaching is super important. Regular training on the products, the systems, the methodologies, and do it as an investment in your team. Train, right? And of course, don't treat core values like a poster on the wall that you walk by on the way to the kitchen to get a. So at my last business, we came up with the core values. Then we developed a series of posters and swag that went around all those things that follow our people wherever they went: water bottles, mouse pads, posters. Then we ran contests. We did a Wheel of Fortune. We did Jeopardy. We did all these things that cause people to be tested on the core values and win money, serious money. $100, $500, $1,000. Trust me, people get involved when they can win $1,000, right? Like the Wheel of Fortune one was the letters turned and what's the ninth letter and the second core value, and please explain how it what's that kind of a thing, right? And so you really want to be true to the core values and then have core value shout outs, right? Like we use the system. There's hundreds of them out there, but we use Motivosity, where everyone in the company gets a certain amount of money every month, depending upon their seniority or their level. And they are allowed to call out to their coworkers for a core value, right? So someone did a results matter core value, and so Jack, who worked with them, calls them out and gives them $2. And it's on a board like a Facebook, Instagram kind of a thing, where you're posting and it allows you to shout out core values, and the managers are heavily incentivized to use the system and use all their money every month to shout out values and recognize people. And in order to give away money, you have to call out a core value and what they did to exercise that core value, right? So you want to really live the core values, and you want to deal with conflict. And I guess the other thing, make sure your teams are aligned cross-functionally, right? So that sales and marketing, right? Understand about finance and operations, and the processes are defined and published. And so that people understand, hey, what's the warehouse process? What's the accounting process? What's the collection process? What's the invoicing process? What's the delivery process? What's the purchasing process? What's the quoting process? And publish those processes and simplify them to their lowest common denominator.
I love that systematic approach. With what you've shared, would you say that it goes a long way in transforming, say, a sales organization from a collection of individual performers into more of a systematic revenue generating machine, or would you add more to what you've just shared with us?
Not sure I completely heard your question correctly, but if it sounds like, for me, the salespeople are all very different individuals and they all operate as like very unique, special. Although I don't treat them like prima donnas, they're prima donnas, right? And so they're all motivated in different ways. Some of them need to be treated like a baby and given high rewards. Some of them need to be shouted out from the rooftops that they're great, and their compensation requirements are mediocre or and more nominal or whatever. And so I find that the best sales team is one where you've got a collaboration of high value closers and guys that are on the road warriors. They just want to be in front of customers, and other ones that are better at the long-term relationship, handling complex and strategic accounts with a multitude of problems. And they don't mind picking up the phone, whether it's good or bad news, whereas other guys just want to go out and close new deals. And you want to hopefully expand your team to the point where you've got a very good sampling of all the different types of people. And together the team becomes like a hockey team, right? Forwards and forward defensemen and et cetera, goal scorers and goalies and whatever.
Great analogy. Thank you for that. Just to wrap up, Glenn, if you were listening to this episode, what would you say would be your top takeaway?
My top takeaway is really, I haven't even told it yet, is my golden rule, which is, and it's in the book, but it's called, you only get forever to make another impression. And it's how I run my day to day, which is My mom taught me to have a good first impression, right? I'm like, yeah, your mom's right. What your mother didn't tell you is that every impression is like the first impression. You're always making an impression. So when you're building, your career is governed by the people above you that are going to determine the path of your career. And those career paths are governed by the impressions that you make along the way. So make sure you're always making a good impression. When the boss walks by, always be working at 110%. Always be on, right? When you're at a trade show, you want to be standing in that booth. You don't want to be like taking off and sneaking away and leaving early and coming in late. Make sure you're there to help set up and tear down and work with all the executives at the show and find out what's good and be out in the aisle pulling customers in and never be sloughing it off, right? Don't be on Facebook and Instagram when the sales manager is walking by. And you always want to be the next logical selection for the next logical promotion that's coming if it's in your career. And so treat every impression like a first impression and a golden opportunity to move and advance your career, because that is what will advance or inhibit your career growth.
Lots of gold in what you're sharing. Thank you for this, Glenn. If listeners are curious, want to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
So they can connect with me on my website, or the best way to connect me really is on LinkedIn. I'm very active there on a daily basis and very easy to get a hold of in that manner. If they want to buy the book, they can link to it on the website or go to Amazon or what have you. And no pressure to buy the book.
So your website's Glenn Poulos, is that .com? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll include links to that as well as your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Glenn, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Oh,